Go sleep in the goat pen, you freak!
Please, no. Don't make me.
In the small village of Abwa, superstition runs deeper than blood. The elders say that albino children are cursed, that they bring bad luck, that they are ghosts living in human bodies. And when Kofi was born with pale white skin and hair like snow, everyone believed it. His mother died during childbirth. She bled too much, and the village midwife couldn't save her. The first words Kofi's father, Clement, heard after his wife's death were from the village elder standing outside the hut. The child killed her. The curse is already working. Clement looked down at the tiny baby in his arms, and instead of seeing his son, he saw a monster. Before this story begins, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the YouTube algorithm push this video to more people who love interesting African stories like this one. For 3 years, Clement tried to raise Kofi alone, but everything went wrong. His yam farm, which had always produced one of the biggest harvests in the village, suddenly failed. The yams rotted in the ground before they could be pulled out. His goats and chickens started dying, one by one, for no reason. His neighbors stopped talking to him. They would cross to the other side of the road when they saw him coming. "It's the boy," they whispered. "He's cursed. As long as he's alive, bad things will keep happening." Clement started to believe them. He looked at Kofi, the strange, pale child, and he felt fear. Maybe they were right. Maybe his son really was a curse. 4 years after Kofi's birth, Clement remarried. Her name was Oluchi, and she was everything his first wife wasn't. Loud, sharp-tongued, cold. But she gave him hope. "I'll give you strong, healthy children," Oluchi promised. "Children who will erase the curse." And she did. A year after they married, Oluchi gave birth to twins, a boy named Uche and a girl named Ada. Both of them had dark skin. The village celebrated. Finally, Clement has real children. But there was a problem. Kofi was still there, and Oluchi hated him. From the moment Oluchi entered the house, she made it clear that Kofi was not her son. "That thing is not part of this family," she told Clement. "I don't want him near my children." Clement, weak and desperate to keep his new wife happy, said nothing. So Oluchi did whatever she wanted. When Uche and Ada were old enough to eat at the table, Kofi was not allowed to join them. He would sit on the floor in the corner, waiting until everyone finished eating. Then Oluchi would scrape the leftovers into a bowl for him to eat. "Eat, ghost boy," she would say with a sneer. Uche and Ada would laugh. Even at 5 and 6 years old, they knew their brother was different, and they treated him the way their mother did. "You're ugly," Ada would say, poking his pale skin. "You look like a ghost. Mama says you killed your real mother. That's why she's dead and you're still here." Kofi never responded. He just ate his food in silence and went back to his corner. At night, while Uche and Ada slept in beds with soft mattresses and warm blankets, Kofi slept on the bare floor. Sometimes, when Oluchi was in a particularly cruel mood, she wouldn't even let him sleep inside the house. "Go sleep with the goats," she would say, dragging him by the arm and pushing him into the goat pen. "That's where you belong, with animals." Kofi would curl up in the corner of the pen, shivering in the cold, while the goats bleated around him. The village was no better. Children would throw stones at him when he walked past. "Demon! Ghost! Go away!" Adults would spit on the ground when they saw him, believing it would protect them from his curse. Even the village priests refused to let him inside the church. "That boy carries darkness," the priest said. "He cannot enter the house of God." Kofi learned to avoid people. He stopped trying to play with other children. He just existed. Invisible. When Kofi turned 12, everything changed. A new teacher arrived in the village. Her name was Favor, and she was an NYSC Corper, a young graduate posted to the village for her mandatory service year. She was nothing like the other teachers. She was kind, patient, and she actually cared about the students. On her first day, she noticed Kofi sitting alone at the back of the classroom, away from the other children. "Why is that boy sitting by himself?" she asked the headmaster. The headmaster glanced at Kofi and frowned. "That's Kofi. He's different. It's better if he stays away from the other children." "Why?" The headmaster hesitated. "Because he's an albino. People believe he's cursed. Bad luck." Favor stared at him in disbelief. "That's ridiculous." "Maybe to you, but this is how things are here." Favor didn't argue, but she made a decision right then and there. She wasn't going to ignore Kofi. Over the next few weeks, Favor paid close attention to Kofi. She noticed that while the other children struggled with spelling and math, Kofi would finish his work in minutes. His handwriting was neat. His answers were always correct. "Kofi," she called out after class, "can you stay behind for a moment?" Kofi froze. He thought he was in trouble. But when the other children laughed, Favor smiled at him. "You're very smart. Do you know that?" Kofi looked down at his feet. "No, Ma." "Well, you are. You're one of the smartest students I've ever taught." Kofi didn't know what to say. No one had ever said anything kind to him before. Favor pulled out a small pack of biscuits from her bag and handed it to him. Kofi stared at the biscuits like they were gold. "Thank you, Ma," he whispered, his voice shaking. From that day on, Favor made sure Kofi never went hungry at school. She would pack extra food and give it to him during break time. And slowly, Kofi started to open up to her. One afternoon, Favor noticed bruises on Kofi's arms. "Kofi, what happened?" she asked gently. Kofi pulled his sleeves down quickly. "Nothing, Ma." "Kofi, you can tell me. I won't be angry." Kofi hesitated. Then, for the first time in his life, he told someone the truth. He told her about Oluchi, about the goat pen, about the scraps of food, about how his father never protected him, about how the entire village hated him just because of his skin. By the time he finished, Favor had tears in her eyes. "This is wrong," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "This is so wrong." "It's okay, Ma," Kofi said quietly. "I'm used to it." "No," Favor said firmly. "You shouldn't have to be used to it. You're a child. You deserve to be loved." Kofi looked at her, and for the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. Hope. Favor went straight to the headmaster's office the next day. "I need to report a case of child abuse," she said. The headmaster sighed. "Are you talking about Kofi?" "Yes. His stepmother is treating him like an animal. His father is letting it happen. We have to do something." The headmaster shook his head. "Miss Favor, I understand you're new here, but you need to mind your business. This is not your family. This is not your problem. A child is being abused." Favor raised her voice. "How is that not my problem?" "Because if you get involved, the village will turn against you. They already think Kofi is cursed. If you defend him, they'll think you're cursed too." Favor stared at him in disbelief. "So you're just going to do nothing? Yes, the headmaster said, and I suggest you do the same. But Favor didn't listen. She contacted NAPTIP, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. She sent them pictures of Kofi's bruises and explained everything to them. 2 weeks later, NAPTIP agents arrived in the village. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't give warnings. They went straight to Clement's compound. What they found out shocked even the agents. Kofi was not in the house. He was tied to a tree at the edge of the forest, barely conscious. Clement and Oluchi had decided that morning that they were done with him, that the only way to lift the curse was to abandon him in the forest and let him die. They had dragged him out before dawn, tied him to a tree, and left him there. If NAPTIP had arrived even a few hours later, Kofi would have been dead. The agents arrested Clement and Oluchi on the spot. "You tried to kill your own son," one of the agents shouted. Clement didn't even deny it. "He's not my son. He's a curse." The agents were disgusted. Uche and Ada, now 8 years old, stood in the compound crying. They didn't understand what was happening. They only knew that their parents were being taken away. "What will happen to us?" Ada sobbed. "You'll be taken care of," one of the agents said. "Your aunts will take you." Oluchi's sister, a kinder woman, agreed to take the twins in. But Kofi was placed in the temporary care of the state. The story went viral. News stations picked it up, blogs wrote about it, social media exploded with outrage. How could a father do this to his own child? This is why we need to end superstition in Nigeria. That poor boy. The state government stepped in. They announced that they would sponsor Kofi's education all the way through university. They would pay for his school fees, his books, his uniforms, everything. But more importantly, they asked, who will take care of this boy? Favor didn't hesitate. "I will," she said. The court granted her temporary custody while the case was being processed. And when Kofi was released from the hospital, Favor brought him to her apartment in the village. Kofi stood in the doorway, staring at the clean floors, the soft couch, the bed with pillows and blankets. "This is your room," Favor said, opening a door. Kofi's eyes widened. My room?" "Yes, your room. You don't have to sleep on the floor anymore. You don't have to sleep with goats. This is your home now." Kofi's lips trembled. "Why are you doing this?" Favor knelt down and looked him in the eyes. "Because you deserve to be loved, Kofi. You always did." Kofi broke down and cried. For the first time in his life, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of relief. When Favor's NYSC year ended a month later, she didn't leave Kofi behind. She officially adopted him. "You're my son now," she said, signing the papers, "and I'm your mother." Kofi, now 13, looked at her with tears streaming down his face. "Thank you, Mother." It was the first time he had ever called anyone that. Kofi didn't just survive, he thrived. With Favor's love and support, he excelled in school. He went on to win scholarships. He studied engineering at the University of Lagos and graduated with first-class honors. By the time he was 30, Kofi had become a successful civil engineer working on major infrastructure projects across Nigeria. But he never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the village that tried to kill him. And instead of seeking revenge, he chose to forgive. Kofi returned to the village with a mission. He built a school, a proper one, with trained teachers and modern equipment. He built a medical clinic where albino children and others with disabilities could receive free treatment and counseling. He started an awareness campaign to educate the villagers about albinism, to show them that it wasn't a curse, it was just a genetic condition. Slowly, the village began to change. The elders who once called him a demon now called him our son. The children who once threw stones at him now looked up to him as a hero. And then, one day, he received a letter. It was from Uche and Ada. They were now adults living in the town near the village. Both of them had finished school, thanks to their aunt's care. The letter was simple. Brother Kofi, we are sorry. We were children, but that is no excuse. We treated you badly. We laughed when Mama hurt you. We are ashamed. Please, if you can, forgive us. Kofi read the letter twice. Then he picked up his phone and called the number they wrote in the letter. I'll be visiting the village next week, so come to the village, he said. Let's talk. When they met, Uche and Ada could barely look at him. We don't deserve your forgiveness, Ada said, tears in her eyes. Kofi looked at them, his siblings, the ones who had made his childhood a living hell. And then he smiled. I forgive you, he said. We were all children. We were all shaped by the adults around us. But we can choose to be better. He reached into his bag and pulled out 2 envelopes. I'm starting a foundation to help vulnerable children in this village. I want you both to work with me. If you're serious about change, prove it. Uche and Ada stared at the envelopes. Job offers. They looked at Kofi with disbelief. You're giving us jobs? Kofi said, I'm giving you a chance. What you do with it is up to you. Today, Kofi is a successful man, a respected man, a man who turned his pain into purpose. Favor, now in her 50s, lives happily with her husband and her other children comfortably, proud of the son she chose to love. Uche and Ada work with Kofi's foundation, dedicating their lives to protecting children like Kofi once was. And the village that once tried to kill him, they now call him their greatest son. If you see a child being mistreated, speak up. If you hear someone spreading harmful superstitions, educate them. Because every child deserves to be loved. Every child deserves a chance. And every child, no matter their skin, no matter their differences, deserves to be called by their name. Not cursed, not demon, just a child. Thanks for watching. What do you think? If you were in his place, would you have forgiven the villagers and your siblings? Or not? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more gripping African folktales filled with mystery, culture, and powerful life lessons. Stay tuned.